If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe. The book of Hebrews is there to destroy Judaism. It's finished, done with. Now it's Christianity.
My name is Nati Massoff from West Orange, New Jersey. My question's on Hebrews 8, on where he misquotes Jeremiah 31 there. He deletes the word Baalti and replaces it with something with I rejected them, which isn't there. But that, from the way when I read the passage, that's like the least of the problems with that. The biggest problem is that he sort of like flips the passage straight on its head and makes it say the opposite of what it's actually saying. When Yirmiyah is speaking of a new covenant, he's actually saying quite the opposite. But it's not just that, but like he seems to tell you right to your face that he's flipping it on its head, because he actually quotes the pasuk where Yirmiyah is defining what the bris Chadasha is going to be, where he says, "I'm going to inscribe the law into their hearts, into their minds." But nevertheless, he still goes ahead with his own version of the bris Chadasha and says that no, it actually just means that Jesus is going to Yeshua is going to replace the base of is bringing some new covenant that he's going to replace it for you. I'm curious as like why Christians don't see this obvious problem. That if you actually forget about just going actually to Yirmiyah and reading the whole parak in context.
Do you know any Christians that read Jeremiah 31? Do you know one Christian that really knows Jeremiah 31 in context? I know the answer. The answer is no, you don't know one. And the answer is Christians don't look it up. What is the book of Hebrews? It's a screed that goes on for 13 chapters. It's the longest argument against Judaism in all the Christian Bible. And in fact, that's how the book of Hebrews begins. The book of Hebrews starts off by saying that in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets in many ways, but in the last day, he's spoken by his son, whom he anointed all things, through whom all made yours. So he actually begins the whole book by saying, in the past, this is how, God spoke through the prophets of old, but now he's speaking through Jesus Christ. So it starts off, so the whole book of Hebrews, Mitchila ad Soifai, from its beginning to its end, is there to convey that Judaism is no longer valid, and it is all fulfilled in Jesus. And I will tell you that the reason I care about Christians, even those who curse me, is I know they're not reading Jeremiah in context. I know that. And that's why I spend a lot of time on air going through the passages themselves. Jeremiah 31, as in 30, is very committed to conveying that Israel is forever. The restoration of Klal Yisrael is in Jeremiah 30. The great tribulation of Jacob is in chapter 30. In Jeremiah 31, we have Jeremiah's opposition to vicarious atonement, and no Christian knows about it. They don't know it. Why? Because they're evil? No, because the churches don't teach it. Sunday schools don't teach it. They don't. So you're absolutely correct. Hebrews not only changes a passage, Hebrews 8, verse 9, alters Jeremiah 31, where it says, "V'anochi ba'alti bom," I was their husband. That word Baal, actually, the root appears many times in Tanakh, which means a man, a husband, or an owner. It means a master of sorts. I was their husband. That Ba'alti, that exact structure, only appears twice in Tanakh, both of them in Jeremiah. The earlier one is Jeremiah 30, verse 14. Hashem is saying, I am the husband of the children of Israel. This theme is not only in Jeremiah, but it's found all over Tanakh. Isaiah 54 is God is Israel's husband who has suffered miserably. That's what's going on. Do Christians pay attention? No, because they're obsessed with 53. Why? Because they're evil people? They're not evil at all. They just go to church, and this is what they hear in the pulpit, and they're told this. And Hebrews 8 ends by saying that which is old will disappear. That's the point. That Jesus is here to replace the old. Jesus is higher than the angels, and he's not an angel. That's how Hebrews begins. And why don't Christians take note of that when they say the angel Lord in the Hebrew Bible is Jesus, when the book of Hebrews begins by saying it's not the case? Greater than Moses, Joshua, Jesus is our Sabbath, he's our high priest, because he's replacing everything. Incidentally, unlike the Gospels, the book of Hebrews was written before the war with Rome. That means Judaism really posed competition. Probably the safest date for Hebrews, let's just say it's written, let's say 64, but it's certainly written before 66. It's certainly before 70, because the temple is operating in its full order. And the book of Hebrews is there to convey that in the past, God spoke to the ancestors. Look at the first verse of Hebrews. Take the whole book of Hebrews, verse 1 and 2 and 3. Just read it. He's saying it. In the past, God spoke to you through the prophets. That's how things went on in the past. But now we got a whole new ball game. That's how it starts. And unlike Paul's letters, Paul was a very temperamental person. So Paul could be speaking in one direction and he'll just shoot off into another direction completely. It's the way he wrote. That was his style. The Hebrews is written very differently. It's highly systematic. So Hebrews doesn't care about what it actually says in Jeremiah 31. That God would prepare our hearts, that people would turn back to Torah, that in those days no one will have to teach anyone about God, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. And then afterwards says, look up at the sky, you see the sun, you see the stars, the moon. If these signs will pass before me, if the very foundation of the earth could be, so will I cast off Israel. So Jeremiah 31 is committed to conveying that Israel is forever and can never be destroyed. That's the whole point of it. And it's an incredible chapter, because it was written by Jeremiah during a time when he was witnessing the destruction of the first temple. How he did it, I have no idea. He's a very difficult prophet to understand how he held his stuff together. And Jeremiah was a prophet for a very long time. He was a prophet for 41 years, from the age of 15 to the age of 56. A very long time. And what he observed and endured and nearly assassinated, he wasn't assassinated. God promised him from the get-go, he's not going to let it happen to him. He was almost killed. A black slave saved him from quicksand. He was close to death on a number of occasions, but he made it. How, in the midst of the disbelief of others, he managed to keep it together and view into the future, deep into the future, that Israel will be preserved and never allow his emotions to get to him. He's a very young Navi. He's very young. He was a teenager when he became a Navi, a prophet. In fact, when Hashem called him to be a Navi, a prophet, Jeremiah, like Moses, argued with God why he really is not the right person for this vocation. And he said, Naranoichi, I'm a kid. He was a teenager. Hashem says, you got what it takes. From the womb, if you want to do it, but you have what it takes, you can do it. Jeremiah was a very reluctant fellow. And how he didn't give up and continued saying, but it's going to happen, is really hard to believe. But the book of Hebrews was written not by Paul, but someone who took his cues from Paul. Because Paul's letters are done by 60. Everything Paul wrote was during the 50s, right? So this is just a few years later. So it's Pauline in its ideas. And the book of Hebrews is lahashmid ulahareg. The book of Hebrews is there to destroy Judaism. It's done away with. It's finished. Done with. Now it's Christianity. And that's how things are being fulfilled. And Hebrews 8 is not an exception to that. How could Jesus be a high priest? It's after the order of Melchizedek. What does that mean? Hebrews can care less, and Christians don't care. Why don't they care? Because they're not learning Genesis 14. Not learning about what's the blessing of Melchizedek they gave to Abraham to defeat his enemies. Read the context. They don't. Why? Because it's just the way it is. They don't. And that's why the work of what we're doing is so important, because the people who are in my interlocutors are not all, but many of them are good faith actors. They mean well, but nebuch, because they grew up in the church, they're lost. And it's our job to bring them the light of Torah, and may we see the coming of the true Mashiach, quickly in our time. Thank you. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.